Thank you, Sean. So just to give you a bit of a perspective, this thing actually started as an attempt to write a response to CPA Alberta. So CPA Alberta was going through a strategic planning process, and they asked me a whole bunch of questions. And so I thought maybe I should try and answer them. Okay, so the kind of questions they asked me, maybe you see these all the time. What kind of skills and competencies will employers want from CPAs in the next 10 to 20 years? What's the risk that employers will choose other types of professionals, such as MBAs or CFAs, etc.? That came up a little bit this morning. How will technology change the profession? What are students looking for when they go into a career in accounting? Is there an interest among other professionals, lawyers, engineers, scientists to get a CPA designation? And then there are a whole bunch of questions. Should we create specializations in accounting? How can CPA Alberta interact better with the universities and post-secondary institutions? Demographics, what's going to happen to, what will the profession look like demographically 10, 20 years from now? What's going to be the demand for CPAs in the market? And then a bunch of Alberta-specific issues. Is Alberta different from everybody else? If so, what should CPA Alberta be doing because it's Alberta? And so my first reaction was, I don't know the answer to any of these questions. But I thought, okay, let me take a shot at that. Now, at the time that they were asking me these questions, chief accountant of the OSC was saying to me, oh, we've got a white paper out on audit committees, and we'd like you to comment on that. And so I said, okay, let me take a look at that. And that kind of seemed to cover the whole waterfront. So it seemed like IOSCO is unhappy with audit committees, but we're not exactly sure why. And my first thought was maybe the audit committees are not paying the auditor, so that's why IOSCO is unhappy with them. But I said, okay, let me take a shot at that too. Let's see what we can see from outside with a very cursory look. What do we see when we look at all these kind of questions? Okay, so we decided to. This is now free service for CPA Alberta, okay? Hired a student, we took a database and we said, let's look at the backgrounds of CFOs in Canada, US, and UK, and go as far back as we can, and just see what's happening in the labor market, okay? And then let's look at the people who report to a CFO and see what that looks like, and that might be our prediction for the future. Is whatever it looks like below the CFO will become the CFO. And then let's look at CEOs, let's look at board members, and then let's look at audit fees, just because IOSCO kind of tugged my attention, and said, okay, let's look at that, okay? So the key finding is going to be that the CPA is in a very significant decline in the US. But that's only a US story, okay? So whatever story we tell you about the US is a US story. It's not a Canadian story, and it's not a UK story, and the professions and the labor markets are totally different. And whatever people tell you about the US doesn't apply in Canada. The other thing that was kind of, even on a very cursory look, was that audit fees are very low in Canada. And actually I had this problem when I sent the paper to the accounting review on customer satisfaction with the auditor. And the accounting firm, which was a Big Four accounting firm, had provided, in addition to the satisfaction surveys of CFAs and CFOs and audit committee chairs, a whole bunch of production data. How many hours they worked, what fees they charged, what the realization rates were, broken down by service line. And when the reviewers in the US looked at the paper, the first thing they said to me is, are you sure this is a Big Four firm? Like, no Big Four firm in the US would have prices so low, and margins so low. Like, are you sure this is a Big Four firm? And so we had to convince the reviewer several times that this was really Big Four data, but they were just amazed at how low the prices were. And we'll show you that a little bit here. And then we started looking, we didn't think that that was a concern of IOSCO. I didn't think that's the reason IOSCO was getting excited, was because Canadian audit prices were low. But we started looking at US and UK audit prices, and then when we start looking at the largest companies, you see very sharp declines in audit prices in the US and in the UK in recent years. So now, at least, I don't know what other issues IOSCO has with audit committees, but at least one issue is the audit committee doesn't want to pay for an audit. Okay. Or at least the prices they're paying are dropping very rapidly. Okay, so the first graph is CFOs in the US. We used a database that looks at all publicly traded companies. The blue line is CFOs who have an accounting background, and as you can see, went back 23 years. There's a roughly straight line, so it's not dramatic, but there's a negative slope. Every year, less CFOs have an accounting background, and they're losing their jobs to MBAs. Every year, the description of a CFO is more an MBA rather than a CPA. Okay, so this is about a 20% drop for CPAs over 23 years. It's about a 25% gain for MBAs. So they're knocking everybody else out who's not a CPA and not an MBA. This is actually conservative. So if we take a subset of the market, suppose we said we're only interested in the biggest firms. So suppose we took S&P 500 and did this analysis, CPA would be down to 40. Okay, so these two lines would have already crossed, and CPA would be down. If we said we want to choose our sample from NASDAQ on the grounds that NASDAQ are the more innovative companies, faster growing companies, companies invest more, CPA would be down another notch. Okay, so to the extent that CPAs are CFOs, there's less of them every day. They're in the stodgy, old, non-growing companies, and increasingly in smaller and less interesting companies. Okay, so there's a huge erosion in the market share of CPAs in U.S. companies. Okay, sometimes in surveys, especially in high-tech companies, they say stuff like, if you've got a CPA, you're disqualified from getting a C-level suite job. Okay, so you actually see that being said in surveys, is that CPA is seen, we don't allow CPAs into strategy meetings. This is the kind of comment CFOs make. So they actually disparage CPAs almost. Well, normally they don't talk about CPA unless you ask them. If you ask them, they say something negative. So there's something very wrong going on here, okay? But it's slow, okay? It's slow and steady. It didn't happen in one period, but there's a clear pattern of decline. I don't actually know why that is, but that's going to be the next thing to figure out what's going on here, okay? If you look at Canada, that's not the story in Canada, okay? So if you look at the blue line, that's Canada. A CFO of a publicly traded company in Canada is a CPA, and it's flat. There's been no deterioration in position at all. In the UK, which is the yellow line, I was a little bit surprised by that. I thought UK would be better than Canada, just because of the way people talk about UK being the best. But actually, they were not better than Canada, but they're roughly the same. We tried Australia, but the sample size was small. Australia looked like UK and Canada. Okay, so what I showed you in that first slide is a very specific US phenomenon. It doesn't apply in any of at least the Commonwealth countries. And there is some market share for MBA, but it's going nowhere, right? It's not got that upward trend, right? So the trend's not there. Some MBAs become CFOs in Canada, but they're not taking over the market. Okay. We looked at CFO and we looked at STEM education. Again, that's a US story about STEM and how important STEM is. Again, the red line up there is US. In US, STEM is really important. So people who become CFO have at least one degree, which is a STEM degree. It's a science, technology, engineering, or math degree. Okay, so increasingly, that's the kind of degree. And usually, that's the advice given to women in the U.S. is if they want to become a CFO or CEO, they should get a STEM degree first. If they get a STEM degree, they got a path to the C-suite. Okay. In the UK, there's some traction for STEM degree. Again, Canada's kind of different. We didn't expect this, but STEM's got no power in the Canadian market. STEM doesn't get you anywhere. Okay, so very few top-level CFOs have STEM degrees. So it seems to be a very different market. Okay, a huge difference. So when you read the newspapers about STEM, a lot of that's a US story, and it doesn't quite translate in the Canadian story the same way. Okay. We looked at people who report to the CFO, and this is where you see trouble. The dark blue is accountants. Okay. So you look at chief information officers, and very few accountants there. Some lawyers, lots of MBAs with STEM, some just pure STEM. You look at ethics officers, again, few accountants, lots of lawyers, more lawyers, few MBAs, few STEM, few just pure STEM. You start looking at IT, most of it just pure STEM. In the US market, STEM sells, okay? STEM sells, but accounting doesn't, okay? HR, same thing, mostly STEM. STEM or MBA with STEM. Investor relations, some more lawyers, some just pure MBA, some MBA with STEM. Risk managers, almost no accountants anywhere. These are the head, right? These are the head of risk management, the head of HR, the head of IT. Almost no accountants there, okay? Funny thing was in controller, couldn't find an accountant in controller. I think, what the heck's going on? And so it looks like companies in the US are now creating new positions called like chief accounting officer, and then the accountants get pushed up over there, and they don't even get controller. So there's some kind of movement where accountants are just seen as compliance people only, and they're not seen as strategic. They're not seen as the people who report to the CFO. They're not going to be the next CFO. So that part was very surprising to us. But this suggests no good news is coming in the US market, because in the positions that are reporting below the CFO level, there's very little accounting presence. Okay. But now we couldn't do this for Canada just because all the databases are US-centric. And so they tend to give you lots of data for US, and they tend not to give you data for Canada. Okay, so we'd have to go and hand collect all this stuff, and if we were inclined, we'd have to get a big research budget, and this is doable, but it would be a big thing. Okay. In terms of CEOs, similar kind of pattern. UK has the top line. A fair number of CEOs in the UK have an accounting background. Canada kind of follows. The US is way at the bottom. Hardly any CEOs have an accounting background. Okay, so they don't make it to CEO, and that's been for a long time. Like, it's not today's thing, right? You can go back 20 years, and this is the way things are going. Okay. We looked at boards. Again, people talk a lot about Sarbanes-Oxley and SOX and audit committees. You should understand an audit committee in the US, there is no accountant, okay? Nobody actually knows any accounting. So if you look at the market as a whole, the red line is the US, a very low level of accountants there. Nobody puts an accountant on a board, okay? Canada is better, UK is better, and the only group doing better over time is UK. UK is getting better. Now, again, if you subdivide this and say, I don't want to look at all public companies, I only want to look at the biggest ones, then it'll look better. Okay, so maybe the 10% in the US will look like 20, because the largest companies are a little bit more likely to have somebody on the board who has an accounting expertise, but that's still 20 instead of 10, okay? So we're still, even when we double this, by looking only at the top end, we're looking at a very small number of companies that actually have anybody who has any accounting training in those positions. And it's not getting better in the US either, okay? So when you say the audit committee will make the accounting better, keep in mind nobody in the audit committee knows any accounting, okay? Just keep that in mind. Okay, students, what can we say about students? Every 20 years or so, we go through a period of angst. Everybody's convinced that accounting is going to fall into the bottom somewhere. Nobody's going to study accounting. Nobody want to come. The profession's not attractive, blah, blah, blah. And so actually in the 1990s, there was this huge, almost panic in the US that nobody was going to come and be an accountant, okay? And then happened Enron. What's the effect of Enron on accounting enrollment? Well, most accountants get that wrong. Enron exploded demand for accounting, okay? All the students said, oh my God, accounting matters. We actually do something that's actually useful. We should do accounting. Well, maybe there's just a lot of jobs got created for accountants, so a lot of students said, oh my God, all the jobs are in accounting. So you had a lot of CPAs and CAs, well, CAs at that time going, oh my God, there's Enron, nobody will be an accountant. Well, actually, that's totally wrong, okay? That's totally wrong. Enrollments exploded and kept rising, interestingly, 15 years in a row. And enrollments just kept rising, okay? So it had nothing to do with whatever happened in the last 15 years. It has no effect on students in the university majoring in accounting, okay? Sometimes when I talk to auditors, they say to me, there's PCAOB, so nobody will be an auditor. So I tell them, go away, don't tell me nonsense. This is just total nonsense. None of the students in the university even know what is PCAOB, right? And none of them know it. But Enron, after Enron, there's just lots of jobs, I think. And there's a lot of jobs, students react to the job market, and the students come in. A lot of people worry about the quality of student coming into accounting. Do good students come into accounting? How do you answer those questions? Well, in the US, they run these longitudinal studies, where they survey students every year from the time they're in high school till the time they graduate from college. And they can show you certain things. In Canada, nobody does any of that. So I decided to go to the registrar's office of one large Canadian university and just ask them for all the grades of all the students who ever went through accounting, okay? Starting from their grades in high school, what were their grades? What were the grades of all the other students who went into the business school? What were the grades of all the other students who went in the university, who entered the university that year, okay? And grade inflation is controlled because across time, we're capturing the same cohorts of students through time. And I didn't put a graph up here, but consistently, again, you can only go back to about 2000 because of Y2K, and everybody changed their computer systems in Y2K. But even going back to the year 2000, a very clear pattern where the entering GPA of students in accounting at high school is higher significantly than the entering GPA of students who go into business school. And the entering GPA of students who go into business school is significantly higher than the entering GPA of the average student coming to university. Okay? I can show you this for thousands of students over the last 15 years, at least in this case only in one university. But there's a general pattern where the quality of student in accounting is significantly better than the average student going into university. Okay? Now you can do the same analysis in university, so you can take the first English course and say, how does the student who ends up becoming an accounting major do relative to everybody else? You can pick the calculus course, you can pick statistics, you can pick intro economics, you can pick any course you want which large swaths of students in the university take. I can show you, at least at this university, consistently the students in accounting have better grades in English, stats, calculus, and economics than the students who are going to business school, and they in turn have better grades than the rest of the students coming through the university. Okay? So a lot of people worry about, oh, the best and the brightest are not coming to accounting, but there's no evidence of that, at least in this sample, which is confined to one university, but it's a large sample, and it goes back to 2000. The quality of student being attracted into accounting is actually better, and there's no real change over time. It doesn't matter whether CPAB occurred or CPAB didn't occur. That has no effect on who goes in university, right? It has no effect on which student comes into accounting. Like that stuff has nothing to do with what goes in the... Again, just as a check on the anxiety people have, are we attracting the best and the brightest? At least when we look at data, or at least we try, the data suggests most of what people say about people are scared off, or they're not coming, or blah, 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 is all not true. Okay? Now, in the most recent years, there is a tapering off. In my case, I'm actually happy about that, because I'm a department head. And I was worried that accounting was becoming too big, okay? So in my school, we have 17 majors in the undergrad program, and accounting is one of them. And 38% of the students in the school were accounting majors. And that's crazy. That's not a business school anymore. That's becoming a school of accounting, you know. And at some point, you know, all of my professors are teaching classes of 70 and 80 and 100. And all the marketing professors are teaching classes of 20, right? And then they all have to publish at the same level. And at some point, you know, anyway, that angst is coming back, because people are starting to worry now, will people go into accounting? In MBA programs, these kind of questions are now starting to be asked. Why do we teach 2 accounting courses in MBA? Why does an MBA need to know any accounting? Can we throw one accounting course out? So what's a new thought that has come in management accounting in the last 20 years is the question people ask, right? So there's a movement, at least in the top US schools, to try and reduce accounting in the curriculum. That's a notion that's not relevant. Okay. Fast track to CPA, I won't say too much. This is a hugely emotional thing, but there are lots of people interested. If CPA wants to create a fast track, there's lots of people interested. Okay. Let me not spend too much time here. We try to track honor roll students, just again as a little thing about how talent flows in public accounting. Do smart people stay in public accounting? So we took all the people, or we took a sample of people who are on the UFI honor roll, and we tried to track them. Again, this is very crude, but what you find is within 3 years, 60% are gone. Within 6 years, 80% are gone. Okay, we didn't do the 9th year, I didn't post here. Within 9 years, 90% are gone. Okay, so there's very rapid turnover in public accounting, and that includes the honor roll UFI students. Okay, again, if I had time, I would tell you some more about that. But quickly looking at audit fees, again, we look at a mid-market, US audit fees for when you control size of company is in the red line. UK is one level down, Canada is one level down again, but we didn't see any precipitous problem now to cause IOSCO to get upset. We tried looking at bigger companies. Interestingly, from 2002, which is Sarbanes-Oxley, the UK pulls away from Canada, and so UK audit fees rise quite a bit, but Canadian don't, or at least not comparatively. But then when we looked at the largest firms, the absolute top, then we see a very huge dive. Okay, so US audit fees are coming down very fast, and UK are coming down very fast, and they're almost becoming like Canadian audit fees. Okay, but Canadian audit fees is bad, right? Canadian audit fees means they're paying very little. Okay. I have some stuff here if you want to look at it about some of what we're doing at the University of Alberta to think about what skills people need in the future. But let me end, I think, in the interest of time. So let me just stop here.